Okay, let's start off with the next presentation here at ABG Introduce Investor Days. My name is Simon Granat and I'm covering tech and IT stocks here at ABG. And with us today we have the pleasure of welcoming Lawrence Flynn, who is the CEO of Artificial Solutions. He is with us here through a remote connection. And with that said, I'll leave the word over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate that, and welcome to everybody. If we run through our short presentation, as Simon said, my name is Lawrence Flynn. I'm the CEO of Artificial Solutions. We've been listed on the NASDAQ First North Growth Market for approximately 18 months. If we move on to the next slide, please, Simon. So the field in which we operate is called conversational artificial intelligence, or conversational AI for short. Specifically, we operate in the enterprise sector, which means that we sell to some of the world's largest companies, particularly large B2C companies who have needs to communicate with their customers. And the conversational AI is used across various applications, including their websites, in their call centers, whether it's voice or text, to automate the communications that these enterprises have with their customers. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Simon. Here I'm talking about a couple of examples of customers that we have today that are using our technology. Our application is called Teneo, and it is used by these large companies to automate conversations. So here's an example of the Swiss telco, Swisscom. Swisscom use our technology in 4 languages, and they use it in our speech-enabled and text versions. And they use it for different use cases. The one use case that they started with is supporting their customers. So this is the circumstance in which you as a Swisscom customer may have a problem with your mobile phone or your broadband, and then using a chatbot on their website, we will guide you through a dialogue-driven problem resolution system in any one of 4 languages as befits their customer footprint. But that's not the only use case that they have. They also have a set-top box that controls all of their TV, home entertainment, and lighting and home security solutions. And that's a fully speech-enabled application. So both applications are driven from the one application that we provide, Teneo, even though the use cases are entirely different. Next slide, please, Simon. Just to give you a little bit more color and one more example of a customer really using the solution. This is a brand that you may well be familiar with. It's Circle K. It's actually a Canadian company, but their center of excellence for artificial intelligence is in the Nordics. And thus they started with us deploying solutions in Danish, Swedish, and Norwegian as their first choice. And what Circle K use our application for is a lot of different things, ranging from supporting their customers' loyalty programs, fuel cards, and so on and so forth, to IT support inside the business, and also supporting all of their many thousands of franchisees. They develop the applications in conjunction with us themselves, and they have a range of benefits depending on the individual use cases, including a 40% reduction in their call center, which has enabled them to focus on doing other more value-added services. If we move on, Simon. So I hope that has given you a flavor of the sorts of customers that we have and some of the example use cases that we put it to work for. To talk a little bit about the benefits for us as consumers of this, I think we can all get to grips with these quite straightforwardly. Perhaps principally it's simplicity, in that we don't have to learn any of the jargon, know any special buttons to press. We just use our own natural language. It's personal in that the applications are tied into the back-end systems of Swisscom, Circle K, Folksam, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the data that is presented is personal to you. So it knows about your account, it knows about how many minutes you've left on your program, and so on and so forth. And thus it can be highly accurate. It has the two twin benefits of speed and availability. It's available 24/7. The robots obviously don't need to take vacation. They don't need to have rest. They can work 24/7. And it's fast. You never have to wait in a queue for a robot because we can scale up an infinite number of robots. As I've already mentioned, it's also a very convenient way for us to interact because it's available on every single channel that we might wish to engage with, whether it's a mobile device, a website, a set-top box like we've just seen there, or the traditional telephone channel. And all of the data is secure, which is one of the unique selling points of our proposition in our marketplace. We enable our customers to keep their data private and secure, fully GDPR compliant, and in many cases within their own call centers. So moving on, if that's the benefits for us as consumers, next slide please, Simon, then is this slide changing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, there we are. I think it's changed.
All right, thanks. If that's the benefits for us as consumers of the applications, what do our customers get from it? Well, in the first case, an important thing for them is that they have leveraged successfully technologies like the internet and mobile technology. And because of that, they've been able to enjoy operational savings. In many cases, they've shut down offices or branches or shops or so on and so forth. But one of the unintended consequences of that was that they only had one means of communicating with their customer, which was the call center. And that was not something that the customers appreciated. So what the conversational AI applications enable them to do is to re-engage with their customers using voice or text, just like they would have done in the old days, but at the same time, not have to employ lots of people and reopen lots of infrastructure. And thus, since the robot can do the job much more cheaply than we can achieve the same goal by paying people to do it, we can actually reduce the cost for the business. So they can service more customers, they can look after them better, but they can do it more cheaply. And we know from studies that customers appreciate this. We know that things like net promoter scores improve as a result of deploying these technologies. And that means that our customers can look forward to longer relationships with their customers, lower levels of churn, higher levels of value per account. But in addition to that, they also collect all this valuable data. And that means that using the tools that we provide as part of the overall platform, they, the company, can learn lots and lots about their customers. Lots and lots of things that they can express in the voice first person singular, which they could not get by tracking eyeballs on websites or people pressing buttons on mobile phone applications, which means that our customers can build suitable products and individually personalize them to the people with whom they are talking. The system will remember all the dialogues and can greet people personally and offer individual upsell and cross-sell opportunities where appropriate. And in many cases, they can use the robot as the embodiment of their brand and provide vital market differentiation. The example I always cite of this is a US fast food company called Jack in the Box, 2,500 outlets across 16 states in America, serving 300 million burger orders a year. And we've developed with them an automated ordering for their drive-through experience. So that you can drive into the environment, it will remember you from your number plate, it will suggest to you things that it knows that you like, it will suggest cross-sell and upsell opportunities, and it does so all in the voice and using the house style of Jack in the Box. So it is really an embodiment of their brand. So if we could move to the next slide, please, Simon. So that's what we do. We offer conversational AI as a software technology to the world's largest enterprise companies who use it to interact with their customers in an automated way for the benefit of the customer and the benefit of the enterprise. And in so doing, we're a software company. We're headquartered in Stockholm, but we're a very international business of about 110 people. Our route to market is principally through strategic partnerships that we have signed up with some of the world's largest systems integration companies and business process outsourcing companies. We also have a number of technology partners that help us engage to fully automate the whole path to customer service, including RPA providers like UiPath and Blue Prism, who can take care of the back-end processes once the robot has determined what steps need to be taken with the next client. So as a small company, we're fiercely proud of our partnerships, which punch well above our size and stature, as we are of our blue chip clients, many of whom are household names and have been with us for some considerable time. So if we move on, how do we convert this into models? Well, basically, our approach has been originally to secure reference accounts. And you can see from the logos there that we have a good number of those already onboarded. And we have recruited a channel of global systems integration companies. And we've proven the technology in the field, which means that the technology is infinitely scalable. Our route to market is more or less infinitely scalable because companies like Accenture have 300,000 consultants in the field dealing every day with the world's largest enterprises. And they have a number of C-level contacts across those enterprises who can help with digitization initiatives on behalf of those customers and realize applications built on the Teneo platform. And because our systems integration partners deliver the much needed professional services to bring the software to life as applications on behalf of the customer, we, as a software company, can focus on our most profitable and highest gross margin revenue streams. So if we move to the next slide, it's hard to see any post-COVID research, but pre-COVID, the conversational AI market was expected to grow roughly 30% compound aggregate growth, which by anybody's means is a fast-growing market. I'm sure that in the immediate short term, the COVID crisis has sent a number of large enterprises into crisis mode, but we now see that very much changing and emerging. And if we move to the next slide, you can see that this is from MIT, that one of the outcomes from the pandemic is that call centers, the traditional medium that enterprises had for communicating with their customers, are being emptied. That is to say, they may have been emptied because during the height of the pandemic, they didn't have access to them, especially if they were offshore in Manila or Mumbai or somewhere like that. But now, with social distancing measures, they can't get the density of employees in there, and they're struggling to cope with managing their customers' interactions without deploying technology. So in actual fact, although there may well be roadblocks along the way, it is expected that conversational AI as a technology will in fact receive an acceleration effect in the medium to long term as a result of the pandemic. And we are already beginning to see those borne out in our internal statistics. And I'll give you one of those in just a moment. So if we move on to our next slide, slide 11, please, Simon. What we focus on from our business point of view is our high margin revenue streams. And basically what they are our license revenues and above all, our usage revenues. So the way that we charge for our products is that we license them to our customers, typically over a 3-year period. And in order to keep the license fees modest, we share in the benefits of the return on investment by charging for usage of the software. This is a highly repeatable, highly scalable, and a self-seeding model as customers enjoy success in one area, do not have to increase their capital costs, and then can roll out to other applications, just as you saw with Swisscom or indeed with Circle K. And we have seen dramatic growths in recent times in the usage of our platform. And this is the result of signing contracts through our partners and directly in 2018 and in 2019 that have gone live and are scaling the usage component of our revenues. And to give you some scale points there, at the end of Q2, we were up 550% on the same quarter as last year. So a very dramatic increase in usage usage volumes, which ultimately, over time, although not today, will be reflected in our pure play revenue numbers. So if we move to slide 12, as I mentioned, we're listed on the First North growth market. Our latest results, as you would expect, were at the end of Q2. Revenues were up 22%, which we're pleased with, especially in the COVID peak quarter. And that's testament to the robustness of our model, our business model, where license fees and usage kept ticking on. Our usage revenue was up 80% on the previous quarter and 113% on the previous year, reflecting an enormous uptick as projects go live. And we anticipate more and more of those to fall to revenue as we go forward. As I said, our goal is to do business through partnerships and alliances. And our partner revenue increased to 53% from 34% the previous year. And because our partners delivered all of the services, our gross margin went up to 69%, 9% up on the previous year. And as I said to you, we've seen some early stage evidence that the conversational AI marketplace, specifically in the enterprise, will benefit in the long run from an acceleration factor driven by the COVID pandemic. And we see this when we track our earliest stage of leads, which we call MQLs or marketing qualified leads, which are up 58% quarter one to quarter two, which is quite dramatic for us. And the vast majority of those are coming from inbound sources, people looking for solutions. So the final thing for me on slide 13 is just a kind of repetition of our market guidance. We anticipate that the company will enjoy growth. We've seen that, it's been registered, and we monitor growth in order intake and in revenue. And we predict and we believe we're well on track, despite the COVID challenges, to maintain order intake growth at or above that of the generic marketplace in which we operate. Because of our partner channel focus, we anticipate that our gross margins will trend towards 70% by the end of this year. And at the end of Q2, that we'd already reported a gross margin of 69%. The company has predicted positive cash flow from operations at the end of this year. And the advice that we've given to the market is that we will monitor that situation. Because even though the company has done very well through the COVID situation, there are still material uncertainties at the global economic scale, which make confident predictions trickier in terms of operational cash flow. But the big story is not just about us turning cash flow positive, which is a relatively short distance away, but it's also about the scalability of the business model and the focus on the high gross margin revenues. And we're predicting that by the end of 2022, just over 2 years away, we will see usage revenues exceed 80% of all revenues. And that is because we see an exponential growth as we can deploy more and more solutions in more and more languages at more and more customers across more and more channels. And that growth is coming from our highest gross margin, which typically is a 90% gross margin business. So we see a very bright future for the company in terms of growth, profitability, and cash generation. So I think that's it from me today, Simon. I don't know if there are any questions that you want to solicit from people, or maybe you have yourself.
Yes, thank you, Lawrence, for that presentation. And I have a couple of questions coming from my end. Initially, perhaps we could talk a little bit about the rationale for why enterprises should invest in conversational AI. I think you lay out it very well, why people should invest in conversational AI, saving costs, increasing efficiency, etc. But the market at the same time is relatively immature. So what are the real obstacles in terms of for this market to take off? How do you overcome these obstacles in order to to convince the customer that they should implement AI's conversational solutions?
It's a good question, thank you. I mean, I think it's highly topical as well, because if you'd asked me that question 6 months ago, pre-COVID, I would have had to explain a different set of benefits, make sure that companies felt secure that the technology was up to the job of replacing humans. Today, because of the COVID crisis, a lot of businesses have been so negatively impacted that they simply don't believe they have any choice but to automate those channels, because they cannot get back to the scale of operation that they had before. And therefore, what we're actually persuading them of, yes, as you articulated, there is a very strong business reason to do this, both all of the benefits that you get now in terms of traditional return on investment and all of the benefits that acquiring the data can bring you as well. But what we have to prove to them is that Teneo is the best. And it's the best because it has everything in the tin that the CIO needs to deliver complex dialogues. Because the challenge for an enterprise is not answering the simple questions. It's actually now, post-COVID, it's managing people through complete complex buying cycles, ordering airplane tickets, booking hotels, looking after their home insurance and their telco accounts. They're non-trivial, multi-turn dialogues, and that's where one of the cases that Teneo absolutely excels.
Could you tell us anything about the market activity post the summer? What are your customers feeling? Are they starting to implement and start to, lift up their restrictions? Are they starting to implement more AI solutions or invest overall? What are the customers saying after the summer here?
So it depends a little bit on the geography. In some geographies, the COVID situation is still, in the first wave rather than the second. Here in Europe, we are returned from the holidays, at full steam, basically. We're still seeing companies rolling out projects. We're still seeing companies implement solutions and make buying decisions. Admittedly, it's taken sometimes longer for those buying decisions to go through because companies want to make sure that they look after their own cash resources, because in many cases they've been negatively impacted in their core business by COVID. In North America, the situation is a little bit more fluid. And it kind of depends very much on the industry that you're in and whether or not you're impacted. We had an airline prospect in the US who is no longer in a position. Their business is much more critically damaged than focusing on conversational AI. But then again, we will announce a go live at one of our customers, who is one of the fresh food delivery companies, and they're going live with their production application in September. And they're at the other end of the scale. They simply couldn't cope with the demand that came at them as soon as people didn't want to go to the supermarket, and so on and so forth. In Asia, the travel bans are still heavily in place in a lot of nations, but things are returning in some of the more developed economies, I would say. So I think we're not out of the woods as far as COVID is concerned, and the situation could sour again, but we are really seeing the wheels of the global economy start to rotate again.
That sounds very exciting, actually, for the future here, Lawrence. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, as we are running a bit of a tight schedule. So I would like to send my big thank you for your presentation, and also for the Q&A session, and for answering those questions, of course. So big thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you to you as well, and thanks for hosting the session. Much appreciated.